This is a powerful message to have been taking place in a society that was explicitly organized on inequality. It's like dynamite.
The petition asked for civil protections, and it enraged the island's white population. Working-class colonists began a full-scale intimidation campaign. They threatened, beat, and murdered mixed-race residents in the capital. But the petition met a different reception back in Paris. The new breed of delegates in the National Assembly issued a landmark decree. They extended equal rights to the small population of mixed-race people born of two free parents. Despite the reform's limited extent, the governor of Saint-Domingue refused to obey. Colonial whites felt profoundly betrayed. Some, such as a planter's wife named Madame de Rouvray, began discussing radical thoughts of their own.
The National Assembly is committed to destroying our lives as masters, so much so that secession from France might be necessary. The slave owners of America, I hope, will band together to stop this contagion of liberty.
The good Lord who created the sun which gives us light from above, who rouses the sea and makes the thunder roar, watches us.
Boukman Dati was a slave and a voodoo priest.
Throw away the image of the God of the whites who thirst for our tears, and listen to the voice of liberty which speaks in the hearts of all of us.
In August 1791, as Saint-Domingue's white and mixed-race population squared off for a showdown, Boukman called together slaves from neighboring plantations. They'd been kidnapped from different parts of Africa, and the voodoo religion was their common culture.
Le vaudou, c'est l'esprit de nos ancêtres, c'est une religion. C'est le mode de vie de l'Haïtien. C'est plus qu'une religion, c'est notre façon de vivre, c'est notre force de... Le vaudou est libérateur, le vaudou est dignité, le vaudou est sagesse, et le vaudou, c'est notre tradition.
Boukman had called them to an area called Bwakaima. First on the agenda was strategy.
That ceremony of Bwakaima is the first Haitian Congress, the beginning of the revolution.
C'est dans cette réunion où l'Africain décide de n'être plus esclave, d'être libre, déjà là dans la tête, de casser cette chaîne dans la tête, de dire voilà, à partir de cette cérémonie, on prend l'Africain a pris son destin en main.
Haitian tradition says the slaves of Saint-Domingue planned that night to revolt. They timed their uprising to start on multiple plantations in 2 weeks' time. And they swore each other to secrecy.
They even said that they killed a pig and they drank the blood. This is what we call a communion. Communion that to keep what you have heard, what you have said to themselves.
The God of the white man calls him to commit crimes. Our God orders revenge. He will direct our hands. He will aid us.
On the night of August 22nd, 1791, 1,000 enslaved Africans attacked their masters.
Les esclaves empoisonnaient, les esclaves piquaient, les esclaves tuaient, les esclaves voulaient leur indépendance.
For them to be free, they have to have the same amount of violence that you exerted on them. That's why the revolution was very brutal. This is that hatred in the first day that came out.
The rebel numbers grew from 1,000 to 20,000 as newly liberated slaves burned cane fields and refineries in order to destroy the system that had enslaved them. Within 3 days, the most profitable plantations in the Americas had been laid waste. 184 sugar plantations and 1,000 coffee farms. Whites and mixed-race people fled to the capital city for mutual protection. From there, they watched firestorms on all horizons.
You've got a fiery cataclysm of enormous scale. I mean, the people on ships in the harbor supposedly could read their mail by the light of these fires that were, 10, 15, 20 miles away, to give you some faint idea of what this would have been like if you were there.
The eruption of violence put Toussaint Louverture in a difficult position. His own fortunes were tied to the plantation system, and he had straddled the white and black worlds for some 15 years.
Toussaint was no longer a slave. He didn't have the mentality of a slave. He was the owner of 2 or 3 plantations. He was not of the same class anymore. His interests were different from the interests of the masses.
But Toussaint's first reaction to the raging violence was based neither on money nor race. It was personal. He went back to the plantation where he had been born to protect his former owners.
It's true that Toussaint Louverture did return to the plantation in the early days of the insurrection and kind of maintained order there. And there's the question of why. Why would he do that? I think Toussaint was somebody who understood the value of humanity in many ways, right? And I think he probably had gained that precisely from being on the receiving end of slavery.
Back in the capital city, as Toussaint helped his former master flee the violence, Saint-Domingue's whites repelled assault after assault. They soon regrouped and launched their own offensive. The bloodletting continued day after day, week after soul-numbing week. French colonist Pamphile de Lacroix.
The country is filled with dead bodies which lie unburied. The Negroes have left the whites with stakes driven through them into the ground. And the white troops, who take no prisoners, leave Negroes dead upon the field.
3 months after the revolution started, the voodoo priest Boukman Doti was killed in battle. White soldiers decapitated him and burned his body in view of the rebel camp. In the words of one observer, the conflict in Saint-Domingue had become an exterminating war. In the autumn of 1791, Toussaint Louverture could no longer sit on the sidelines. Despite a wife and children, Despite the chance, even of losing his own freedom, Toussaint didn't hesitate long.
He left everything. He dropped everything, and he went to the mountain.
It was an act of extraordinary risk. The island's 500,000 slaves outnumbered whites by 12 to 1. But their ultimate prospects were poor. Few had experience in military strategy, and they had no unifying history or long-term vision.
The fact is, a lot of people didn't really know what freedom was supposed to look like. Nobody had really even theorized or imagined this before.
Toussaint, on the other hand, had a unique window on the world. He was schooled in African and European culture alike, and had read some of France's most radical thinkers.
Toussaint had certainly read a text by l'Abbé Raynal, which predicted that out of the colonial slave system with its, frightening imbalance of numbers and horrible suffering and all of that, there would emerge a leader, revolutionary leader. I believe Raynal referred to him as a black Spartacus. Toussaint is a literate person. There's no way he would have missed this.
As rebel leaders struggled to forge a disciplined fighting force, Toussaint's talents and intellect set him apart. Then, in December 1791, some 4 months after the rebellion began, black enthusiasm began to crumble. The new French government in Paris sent more than 10,000 military reinforcements to help the colonists reestablish white rule. Supplies were scarce in the mountains, and winter brought famine to the rebel lines. Thousands began to surrender.
Toussaint Louverture was not somebody who liked violence, really. He was good at it if he had to do it, but he preferred to use negotiation, diplomacy, guile, trickery, anything but. And if that didn't work, he'd kill you, no problem. But he'd try anything else first.
Toussaint Louverture was asked to write up a settlement offer in exchange for the freedom of 200 slave leaders and better working conditions on the plantations. The proposal offered to send most of the rebels back to the plantation. It was a stark recognition of 18th century realities.
Sometimes it's easy to look back at this and suggest that they were willing to sell out their followers. While the terms, I think it's true, are troubling in some ways, they were also trying to seek some change. And I think the key here is that it was really difficult to imagine that you would actually eliminate slavery.
New French commissioners had just arrived from Paris to restore order. More liberal than the planters, they urged Saint-Domingue's whites